Did you know the BBC once aired a ghost investigation so terrifying people thought it was real? On Halloween night in 1992, families across the UK tuned in to what they believed was a live paranormal special, hosted by some of the BBC's most trusted faces. By the time the credits rolled, viewers were crying and flooding police phone lines with calls for help. Some were traumatized. One family blamed the broadcast for their teenage son's suicide. This wasn't a Halloween prank. It was a broadcast called Ghostwatch, and it became one of the most infamous television events in British history. Ghostwatch was presented as a live BBC investigation into supernatural events at a typical London home, number 30, Foxhill Drive in Northolt. The setup was believable, too believable. The broadcast featured Michael Parkinson, one of the UK's most respected television hosts. Alongside him were Sarah Green and Mike Smith, both familiar BBC personalities. It felt official, grounded, safe. They weren't just telling you a story, they were inviting you into it. Sarah Green was stationed at the haunted house, interviewing the mother and two young daughters who claimed to be tormented by a ghost that they nicknamed Pipes. And back in the studio, Parkinson took calls from viewers live on air, inviting people at home to share their own paranormal experiences. But this wasn't live, and it wasn't real. As the program continued to unfold, strange things began to happen. Unseen thumps, cold spots, glitches in the footage, and Pipes, who was believed to live in the walls, scratched at the family, whispered to them, and then for just a few frames, viewers saw Pipes. And that brings us to one of the most intense frames of the entire film, standing silently in the shadows, wearing a long dress, a pale face, and dark hollow eyes. Meet Pipes. It wasn't acknowledged by the presenters, but viewers saw it. And from that moment on, the tension never let up. Pipes was revealed to be the spirit of a disturbed man who had died in the house years prior. A man who believed he was possessed by the spirit of a Victorian child killer. The hauntings weren't just residual, they were active, intelligent, malicious. By the final act, Ghostwatch went completely off the rails. Sarah Green disappears. The house goes dark. Michael Parkinson is left alone in the BBC studio, possessed. And the final image, Parkinson mumbling in the dark. His voice is slowly shifting into something inhuman.
Like a teddy bear.
Didn't believe that story, but was a sentence. Did you?
The show ended, but the panic didn't. Within minutes, the BBC's phone lines were overwhelmed. Over 1 million calls came in that night. Some were complaints, some were terrified viewers asking what the fuck had just happened. You have to understand that the BBC had aired Ghostwatch without any commercial breaks, without any disclaimers or context whatsoever. There was no indication that what people are watching was fictitious in any way, not even at the end. It aired under BBC's Screen 1 drama banner. Yes, but few viewers noticed. To them, it was real. Emergency services received so many calls that night that some areas were briefly paralyzed. Parents reported children suffering nightmares, panic attacks, and even PTSD-like symptoms. And in the worst-case outcome, an 18-year-old named Martin Denham died by suicide 5 days later. His parents directly blamed the show. No disrespect, because obviously that's sad and all. If this 18-year-old's 13th reason was actually this broadcast, there was something else going on. The backlash was immediate. The Broadcasting Standards Commission condemned the BBC for cultivating a sense of menace. They said it had blurred fact and fiction to an irresponsible degree. It wasn't banned, but it was never rebroadcast. For years, Ghostwatch was locked away, referred to only in hushed tones, and newspaper columns about media gone too far. It became a kind of forbidden broadcast, passed around on VHS tapes and, later, bootleg digital uploads. What's incredible is that Ghostwatch wasn't thrown together for shock value. It was written by Stephen Volk, originally intended as a 6-part series, but reimagined as a one-night event. It was meant to play with format, meant to blur the line. Nobody expected it to work as well as it did. Ghostwatch predates the Blair Witch Project by 7 years. It predates Paranormal Activity by over a decade. It used real TV presenters, real sets, real graphics, and minimal special effects, and in doing so, it laid the blueprint for the modern found footage genre. In fact, many filmmakers have cited it directly as an influence, including the creators of Host, Lake Mungo, which we'll talk about in a later video, and Noroi, The Curse. It is now considered one of the most brilliant and dangerous experiments in television history. If you haven't seen Ghostwatch for yourself, I do recommend it, but just know that as a modern-day horror fan, the first half can feel a little slow, so placing yourself in the proper context is really important for this experience.